Welcome, everyone. Special welcome to Zoomers who are tuning in from afar. We'll start in just a moment when we can get people into the room here. We'd love to have some people up in the front row here. Good place to hear. What? Oh, nobody sits up front at church either? Come sit up front. Come on in, come on in. Welcome, everyone. What a pleasure to be here. This is our first reading of the season and our official start using this great space, Coolidge Room. And we have two readers today, Walker Resnick and Julie Olmsted. They're going to be introducing one another, and they'll each read for about a half an hour and linger around for refreshments afterwards. Thank you so much for coming out. Here we go.
Hi, friends. Just want to take a moment and take a nice breath together and maybe just look around the room a little bit. I don't know, was thinking earlier today to be able to gather in safety and peace. It's a wonderful thing that we might take for granted, and I'm very grateful for all of you, and I'm especially grateful for Carol and Robin and what they provide to this community with their writing groups and their generosity of spirit, and it's just a real pleasure to be here with you. So I'm here to introduce my friend Walker. In addition to the writing he does, whenever he can get himself to stop avoiding the keyboard, I assume that's the computer keyboard, not the piano. Walker Resnick teaches high school English and edits the Pineapple, the e-zine published by Gallery of Readers. He also facilitates a writing group modeled after Robin's Monday morning writing workshop, which he attended briefly in the summer of 2020. His work appeared in multiple student publications while he was an undergraduate student at UMass Amherst. Walker won me over big time when we met for coffee to chat. He told me he loved what he did, teaching middle and high school students in Chicopee. And I asked him what he loved about it, and he said, "Every day I bend over laughing about something that happened or one of the students say." And he glowed as he said this, and it really lifted my spirits and gave me hope for the future, that someone still feels that way about teaching. And I can only imagine what his students feel about you. Walker has a warmth of connection that shines through the tiniest of communications. It is a double treat for me as a mother and a friend of his brilliant mother, who is in our Monday morning group, to be reading with this sensitive teacher and gentle, clever soul. Listen and enjoy. Walker Resnick.
Thank you, Julie. It's been said, will be said again, but cannot be said enough. Carol and Robin, all you do, thank you. None of us would be here without you. All right. If anyone in the room was at the reading we did in June, where I read briefly for about 5 minutes, what follows is a direct continuation of that from the novel I am working on, but don't worry if you weren't there, it should mostly make sense. The novel is the story of a young man named Andrew, and it tells both the story of his life at about my age, in about now, and the story of his parents meeting and getting together as students, as exchange students in Paris in the 80s. And the section I'll be reading is some of the scenes from Paris in the 80s. I won't. How's the volume? Great. Okay, thank you. So my last reading ended with the birth of this character, Andrew. So this is when he is born. Then there was the naming. Then there was naming the baby. After hours of painful labor, a baby emerged from the ruins that were all that was left of his restaurant, his old neighborhood, her night of agony. He wanted to name their son Andre after his father. She was sick of what was clinging to what was past, seeing the name as clinging to his old ways, the ways that had nearly bankrupted them. Her son would have a proper American name. And yet, she liked the name Andre. It reminded her of a college student she'd met during her last summer in Nice, in between her years of studying in Paris. Her Andre had been dashing in his olive green cardigan over a crisply ironed wet shirt. White shirt. He always ironed his shirt, even if she only ever saw it on him for a few minutes at a time. It was a quirk that endeared him to her in the same way his overly large round glasses made him irresistibly adorable. 3 years older than she, he was home for the summer, having finished his license in Paris and going back in the fall for his master's. He was brilliant. His understanding of the newly emerging technology of computers never failed to impress her, and she knew he would be a wonderful engineer. How could he not be, with the lines of his body so perfectly drawn, lines that her hands fit so smoothly into the contours of? How could God have put him on this earth so meticulously crafted to not succeed at whatever he put his mind to? As much as she wanted to think of that carefree summer whenever she looked upon her son, she couldn't do it. Not just because it wasn't American enough, nor out of respect for her husband, but because she couldn't connect the two women. One curious and lively, running through the back alleys of Nice, laughing and holding his hand. The other, a woman living in the real world. A real life and real problems, problems that the girl in Nice could never understand. She wasn't that girl anymore, and the thought of connecting herself back to her by the bestowing of his name was inconceivable. The gulf was too large, too impassable for her to cling to what had been. They settled on the Americanized version, Andrew. Even that seemed blasphemously close to that young girl she had been, but the blending of the old and the new, the French and the English, appealed to her in a powerful way. She could hold on to the part of her that still lived in France, as well as ushering her son into her new life in America. It would have to do. Andrew Thomas. It didn't sound French at all. To clarify, This is a woman who was born in the U.S., who studied in France. I'm realizing that isn't clear. Okay. They met while attending college in Paris in the fall of 1984, each at least 2 generations away from their Francophone roots, speaking American English without an accent, and muddling through their French classes, trying to reclaim a heritage that felt far removed from the world they had inhabited back in the States. His grandparents had left France for New York just ahead of the German invasion in 1940, where they'd opened a restaurant that had been in the family for 50 years. A 50-year-plus heritage that Jean had let slip through his fingers instead of passing it to his son, as had been expected of him. Her, however many great-grandfather, had been a French officer under Rochambeau in the American Revolution. He'd been consumed by the vast tracts of land available for the taking and summoned his wife and young children to join him on a farm in upstate New York. Now, in Paris, in 1984, they had come full circle. Jean and Juliette. Even the names were cutely alliterative. He first noticed her while contemplating the Arc de Triomphe, slowly walking around the base of the massive pillars. She sat off to the side in the shade of one of the pillars, sketchbook propped on her knee, pencil in hand, and brow furrowed in concentration. She didn't notice him walk past her. So caught up was she in the act of rendering what small aspect she could of the Arc. He glanced down at her paper, and his eyes widened as he admired the confidently drawn lines that depicted the ceiling of the arch, as well as the far wall. The detail was striking, the precision exquisite. He couldn't keep the whistle of appreciation in. It slipped out from between his lips almost before he consciously processed the contents of the pad. Her shoulder muscles, already bunched forward from the way she was sitting, leaning over the sketchbook, tensed even further for the briefest of seconds, then relaxed as the initial startlement of his presence washed over her. She stood up quickly, looked him up and down, her eyes hard, contemptuous, a challenge in her expression. You French boys are all the same. Don't you know it's rude to sneak up on someone like that? Ever since I got here, I've had you idiots following me around town like puppies. How many times do I have to tell you I'm not interested? He just stood there, his mouth half open as the tirade crested and crashed into him with the force of a tidal wave. He tried to formulate a response, but the words stuck in his throat as he couldn't help but notice how cute she was, her dark hair falling gently across her right shoulder, her green eyes flashing. Oh, yeah, most of you guys don't know English. Arrête de me suivre. Ça ne m'intéresse pas. He smiled. Wow, you are full of yourself. What makes you think every guy around is stalking you? Well, for starters, she froze. Wait, you speak English? Yeah, I do. You're American? He nodded. Her face cleared. A tension left the muscles around her eyes and jaw, her shoulders lowered at least an inch. What a relief. These French guys are nuts. What? Just because I'm an American, I can't be a creep? I'm hurt. She let out a small chuckle. I'll take my chances. That bad, eh? She sighed, some of the tightness returning to her body. You have no idea. I have friends who have been literally stalked by French guys looking to sleep with them. I've been followed home at least twice in my first couple days here. Wow, I should take a tip from these French guys. I bet I'd get laid a whole lot more. Really? That's your response? You know what? Forget it. I was right. You are just like them. Pig. She pushed him past him and hurried away towards the crosswalk and back along the Champs-Élysées. He hurried after her. Wait, I didn't mean it like that. She didn't turn back, flipping him the bird over her shoulder. She walked home quickly, convinced by every flicker of her peripheral vision, every shadow that danced unaccounted for on the sidewalk. She knew deep in her bones, someone was following her. Maybe the asshole from the Arc de Triomphe, maybe some anonymous Frenchman looking for some action. It didn't matter. She didn't look back, all too aware of what she might see. The leer they all thought was impossibly charming, the cigarette hanging from their fingers casually to the side, the swagger of step that only a young man would try to pull off, even though it was no less ridiculous on him than on anyone else. Despite having only been in the city a matter of days, she knew the image well. She hated walking home at night, the creeping sense of danger all around, the ominous feeling that something bad was about to happen. She'd lost track of time in her sketching, only noticing the descending sun as her view of the inside of the ark began to fade into a dark amber. It was a common occurrence, an all too common one. She quickened her step, trying not to make it obvious, to still look casual, calm. Everything is all right. Nothing is wrong. I'm not going to run from this bastard. She tried to make herself believe that it was all bravado rather than a fear of escalation. Sweat rolled its way lazily down the back of her neck in the sweltering heat of the late August night. Her breath shortened. She wiped her neck with the back of her hand, still trying to make everything look casual, calm. A clack of rock against cement sounded behind her, echoing in a way that made it impossible to tell how close he was. She couldn't breathe. She had to look back. She couldn't face him. She was only a few blocks from her apartment. Despite her attempts to remain calm, her feet began rebounding off the sidewalk at a more rapid, more urgent beat, a beat to match the fierce pounding of her heart. By the time she hit the last intersection before her street, she was running flat out. Sure, she must look crazy. Sure, he was close behind her. If only she wasn't breathing so heavily, so loudly, she would be able to hear his labored breathing as he kept pace a mere inches from the back of her neck, where she swore she felt his hot breath coming out in force as he panted to keep up with her. In front of her building, she crossed the divide that separated the public street from the private space that was hers. Only then did she turn back, prepared to let this jerk have it, to deliver the telling off he so richly deserved, to see the hurt and disappointment on his face. That was her favorite part of each time she confronted a French stalker over the last few days, if it could be said that she had a favorite part of having a stalker. The looks on their faces, the innocence of what, to them, was a perfectly normal interaction, spoiled and tainted by her taking it too seriously, or trop sérieux, as they would say. Americans, they would say, as though it was a problem with her country. As though a French woman would be flattered. Hell, maybe she would be. She turned to confront him, and there was no one there. Carefully, looking each way as though she were crossing the street, she descended the stairs, re-entering the realm of public access. But there was nothing. No creepy long man, no cigarette, no false innocence, not even the American guy she'd met earlier. She turned back to the front door between Paris and home and got out her key. The building was a classic Parisian limestone apartment in the 18th arrondissement, charmingly adorned with creeping vines that would one day want to reclaim the space that had been theirs alone, but for now provided a nice patina to the otherwise bland gray facade. She opened the door and stepped into the lobby of the once grand building. The ceiling was high, an exorbitant chandelier draping its majesty down on the cracked tiled floor. She pressed the button for the elevator and felt the twinge of anxiety that she still couldn't contain as the metal box descended creakily in its wrought iron cage. It shook slightly all the way up, convincing the animal part of her that was beyond reason, the part of her that had been convinced she was being followed, the part of her that still flinched every time a man's hand got within 5 feet, that it was seconds away from snapping its cord and falling to the basement. Exhaling an embarrassingly loud sigh of relief, she stepped out onto the landing on the 3rd floor and made her way to the part of the building that was safe, the part that was hers and hers alone, or at least just hers and Ellen's. Ellen was an American graduate student from Chicago studying art history at the Sorbonne, doing a dissertation with some world-renowned professor or some intimidatingly impressive shit like that. The apartment was small, but cozy and clean. It even had a fireplace, though its use was looked upon dubiously by its inhabitants, neither sure if they were still allowed in modern usage in buildings like this. Juliet didn't release the last breath of tension until she crossed the threshold of her room and closed the door, crossing into the last and smallest of the 4 concentric circles she had passed through to get from the totally public street to the totally private chamber that was just for her. She collapsed onto her back on the mattress, the bag with her sketchbook hanging off the side. Her breath left her in one great escape. in the heartbeats between the forceful emigration from her lungs and the resulting immigration. She hung between the two states, the ending of panic lingering at the door as the soothing presence of safety filled her. As her lungs filled, panic took one last look back, pleading for her attention. She looked away, refusing to acknowledge its presence. It sighed and passed out of her space, slamming the door in its wake. Juliet walked to campus the next day without the feeling of being watched. She hadn't felt this free since she'd arrived in France. She couldn't put her finger on what it was, and she continually looked back behind her to make sure she wasn't missing a gang of young men following her. Nothing. No one. She breathed a breath of fresh air that was as full as the one she breathed in the safety of her apartment, taking the fresh, outside Parisian air more deeply into her lungs than it had been before. The trip was short. A few minutes to the metro station, around the corner, a short ride, and she was on the bustling campus of the American College in Paris. She'd explored campus over the weekend, so she knew the way to her first class of the day, her first class in France. As it happened, it was a French class, French literature. She walked into the classroom to find about 20 other students already sitting around the large seminar table. She took the empty seat closest to the professor, the perennial consequence of being the last to arrive. She didn't care, preferring to be in the center of the action. After she sat down, the professor, a youngish man with a prematurely balding hair, looked up from his clipboard. He began in French. "Good morning, my name is Professor Laurent." "Good morning, Professor," the class chorused back, also in French. Professor Laurent's eyes returned to his clipboard. "Is Roger here?" A boy on the other side of the table from Juliet nodded. "Henry, George, Mary." Juliet tried to remember all the names coming out of the professor's mouth, his French accent butchering some of the more Anglo-originating ones. But knew it would take her a couple of weeks to get them down. Wait. Her eyes looked up sharply to see the face behind the voice that responded to the most recent name the professor called. It wasn't him. It couldn't be him. What was that name again? Jean? That was a French name, and that asshole from yesterday had been American. With a name like that, this man had to be French. She glanced up, just to confirm, just to be sure. It was the wire-rimmed glasses that dropped the bottom out of her stomach. The disheveled blonde hair confirmed what she already knew, a knowledge that entered through her eyes and traveled down to her heart to form a clenching fist. It squeezed in pulses, matching the pulsing rhythm of the organ. She'd known the newfound emptiness at her back had been too good to be true. His eyes met hers, and she looked away a beat too late. In that instant of contact, his eyes had widened, and his cheeks had been lit with an eternal flame. "Juliet?" The voice, though no further than 3 feet to her right, passed over her, unable to reach the depths of the pit that had become her stomach. "Juliet?" She looked up, and the word clicked back into focus. "Present." Professor Laurent responded with a vaguely concerned look, shook his head slightly, checked her name off, then put his pencil down. "All right, we're beginning this semester with Voltaire. Please pull out your copies of Candide." Jean mustered the courage to approach Juliet after class, determined to leave a better second impression. Her long legs had propelled her halfway to the classroom door by the time he'd gathered his papers into his messenger bag. He caught up with her at the door. "Hey, Juliet, Ken," he started. She kept walking, not looking back. "Okay, if that's how you want to be," he called after her. She flipped him the bird again over her shoulder. He winced, then, after a second, headed through the halls to the main door of the building out onto the street. The air was heavy, thick with the humidity so prevalent in the waning days of summer. He glanced left, then right, looking for her. She was walking briskly away, a block to his right. He took a few steps to follow, then stopped. If he followed her, he really would become the creepy stalker she'd accused him of being. He exhaled slowly, then turned the other direction and began walking. Want me to jump right into... Thank you. Um, I am not going to try to exceed the incredible introduction she gave me, but I hope I can at least I hope I can match it. Julie G. Olmsted has been a writer, preacher, runner, dancer, comic, and ponderer of life since age 3. She was always the school's narrator, poet, focused reader, and mistress of showing off. She has been an ordained minister since 1991, serving UCC churches in New York, Ohio, Connecticut, and now Massachusetts, where she has lived with her genius musician and composer, husband Jeff, since 2010. Jeff and Jewel met in New York City, where they wrote songs and performed for several years, producing the award-winning cabaret comedy Jeff and Jewel's New Age Blues Revue, which took them to 5 states and earned them 4 MAC Award nominations from the Manhattan Association of Cabarets and dozens of dollars. Julie has won awards for her theological essays and reflections, including Visiting, the Gift of Pastoral Care in Ministry, which took her to Florida with her family to present the paper and kick up their heels in Disney World. She was a columnist for the Dayton Daily News for 5 years, and her essays for that publication were collected in a book, Stepping Onto the Invisible Bridge, Courage for Every Season of Your Faith Journey. She was nominated for Dayton's Top 10 Women in 2006. She has been a guest columnist for the Gazette and other publications since moving to Northampton in 2010. Her memoir, Cornbread in Heaven, Crumbs and Pieces from a Sweet and Savory Life, is in the publication process and will be available next year. She is reading from that work today, as well as poetry and pieces from her recent essays. Julie is proud of her long and varied work life, which includes waitress, call hop, writer, social worker, secretary, puppeteer, house cleaner, meat packer, proofreader editor, and Weight Watchers leader. She led programs for Landmark Worldwide, formerly EST, for over 12 years. She has written and preached a sermon nearly every week for over 30 years. Julie is working hard to retire from ministry, but likes to keep her options open, saying that old ministers never retire, they just go out to pastor. She currently does interim work and guest preaching as well as life coaching, vitalspiritlifecoaching.com. She is grateful and honored to have been in Robin's writing workshop since 2012. When I was briefly in the workshop Monday morning in the summer of 2020, I got to know her and her work a bit, and then again when I met her for coffee a couple weeks ago, I got to know and found my memory of the warm, bright, lively person only confirmed, and I am very happy that Carol chose to pair us together. Here she is, Julie G. Olmsted.
Thank you so much. Could I get some more water, dear? Or, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm sure it does. This mic stand is so cute. Righty-tighty. Better? Okay. I'm going to be reading from my memoir, Cornbread in Heaven, which will be, thank you, published in the next year, in the upcoming year. And I've divided my readings into 3 sections, reflecting 3 ages of my life. Some memoirs are just for a couple of years or so. Mine is for about 30. It's a very small book, but it's jam-packed. I just want to remind you, if you wouldn't mind me having your email, I promise not to harass you. If you could just write it in that spiral notebook in the back of the room so I could keep in touch with you about the book publication and other exciting news. This first section is from when I was about 10. And Sissy is my sister. When Sissy and Gary got married, Mom and Daddy Sag, my stepfather, separated. Mom got a job down at Rockaway Beach on Lake Taneycomo, right near the Arkansas line. Mom and I, we were a team, buddies, pals. We sang in the car as we wound our way through the curvy Ozark Mountains. Our favorite was Doris Day's Que Sera, Sera. We sang hymns, too, like I'll Fly Away and Standing on the Promises. I got a job, too. They needed busboys, and I was eager to get in on the action. At 10 years old, I'd be making good money, especially since most days I was on for 10 hours, 1 hour for each year I'd been alive. Johnny Donini's restaurant was busy all the time. I had my first pizza, my first taco, and first fried ravioli there. Mom and I drove back and forth for a while, singing and talking, and for the first time in front of her, smoking. Mom thought I'd get sick after asking for that first puff, but I surprised her. I loved it. One night on the drive back home, it wasn't fun. It was getting dark, and the hairpin curves of the deep Ozark Hills were scary. Mom was upset. I or someone had said something that made her mad, and she seemed to not be herself, someone different, unhinged, and dangerous. I had never seen her drive like this, fast and careless, her jaw clenched, her eyes squinty and cloudy. I didn't say anything. It wasn't an argument. It was an episode. It wasn't a scolding. It was a whipping of words. I felt small and invisible, thought I might accidentally open my door, or maybe even not accidentally if she would only slow down. What had come over my sweet mother? As we raced through the night, the clicking of the bright lights going on and off underneath her left foot each time a car came from the opposite direction. I thought we might careen over the railings that girded the steep overhangs of the mountainous curves. I knew we would. I tried closing my eyes, but that made it worse. Very quietly, I uttered the words, "Sorry, Mommy, I'm sorry." It didn't help. It made no difference. The speed was overwhelming my words and my thoughts. Mom was yelling about not being appreciated, not being understood. She needed encouragement, not criticism. No one understood how smart she was. She was valedictorian of her graduating class. She could have been a doctor, a lawyer, a congresswoman. She didn't care if she lived or died. She might be better off dead. We all might be. The car screamed across another curve and started down a very steep hill. Would we topple over the hill? I couldn't see the bottom, and I prayed for God to help my mother. At last, the road calmed down. Familiar, gentle slopes were coming into view. I saw the Dairy Queen, the Conoco station, and the farmhouse restaurant where Mama used to work. There was no talking now. My breath became easier, and as we pulled into the gravel driveway of our house and Mom turned off the car, I put my hand on the door handle and I pulled very quietly. As I slipped out of the car, I looked up at the bright, starry sky, went inside, and got into bed. Age 19. My friend, Roberta, had bought into the whole druggie scene. I played around with it, but I had big reservations about the cool trip that was sweeping the nation, or at least my part of the world. She often had a strange look in her eyes that told me she was seriously unwell. One night we were driving to Tulsa together and we got into an argument. I was driving in the rain on the turnpike, driving too fast. The car hydroplaned and I lost control. We crossed the meridian, turning around and around, hitting nothing and no one miraculously. Finally, the car came to a stop in the middle of the wide field between two directions. Roberta's eyes were closed. Mine were wide open. We weren't high, but we were traveling to see a band in Tulsa, JT and the Mudflaps, whose members were high all the time. The line between drug use and mental illness was blurred for Berta. She was mad at me, but she was glad we had the accident because she thought it might kill her. She wanted to be dead, she said, and now she was mad at me because she hadn't died. The accident, which seemed horrific in the moment, wasn't so bad as it was terrifying because the car started and we continued down the road to Tulsa. After the band got off, we all got high and we went to a turnpike plaza about 3 a.m. I thought we were having fun, but when Berta and I went into the restroom, she wouldn't come out. She was paranoid. She was afraid of the guys. The fear in her eyes was scary. I worked up my creative juices, and I outlined a plan for Berta, going along with her paranoia. So, if we go with them now, and they start to act weird, I'll say I'm going to get sick, and they'll stop the car. We'll get out then and hitch a ride back to our car. Trust me, it'll work. I was desperate to get her out of that bathroom and for us to get back to Missouri. I would have said anything. But this actually worked. Berta just suddenly snapped out of it. She hopped off the bathroom sink, shook out her long, straight brown hair, and smiled. Okay. When she walked out into the light, she simply said, "Sorry, guys." Roberta and I became estranged, and she went in and out of psych wards for a few years before she died suddenly in her home. We had some conversation after the Tulsa incident, but it was cordial and without much substance. To her, I was superficial, caught up in the world, not heavy enough. It was important now, not only to be cool, but to be heavy, which meant deep and soulful. And I was perfectly happy to be hot and light, whatever all that crap meant. I did enjoy drinking, however. Drinking was relaxing, sexy, and brought out the fun lover in me. And it helped slow me down, too. Once, I was out drinking with friends, and I came home to a terrible fight between Mom and Daddy Sag. The police were there. The atmosphere was garish and harsh, just like when Mom hit Gary with the cast iron skillet, and so all appeared even weirder than usual. I was pretty drunk too, I have to say. I steeled myself and I scolded my mom. "Mom," I said, "you're drunk." "Well, I'm no more drunk than you are," my poor, undignified mother slurred. The officer said, "Mom, or ma'am, I know drunk, and this young lady is not drunk." Inside myself, I had to laugh as the room swirled around me. On the outside, I was cool, collected, concerned daughter, with innocence as my sword and shield. I was a smooth drinker who could hold her liquor well, I decided, which might be a good thing. Age 21. A crack appears. It happened with stealth. It happened right under my nose. It happened like an invasion of mold or peeling paint, like holes in the yard or an invasion of carpenter ants in the woodwork. There was an erosion, a buckling, a breakdown of essential proteins in my psyche. I was entangled. I was in love. And I was developing a mental illness. My confidence sagging, my cockiness crumbling, and my sense of budding discovery and endless possibility becoming overcast and heavy. One day, I wrote the following while waiting for Herm, my then boyfriend, to get off work at the mill. The sky was once so blue, so deep, so endless and stirring. I could touch it. Now I can't even see it. But I know it's there. Is that hope? My body lies cold and numb through a cracking mask of fakery. My mind begins to scream, "Help me, please." One hot sunny day, we went to the drag races. Now Herm loved the sights and sounds of a souped-up rig, the smell of gas and oil, the roar of engines. It was hell to me, although I tried to like it. On this day, I was so fragile. I was a stranger to myself. I was nervous, shaky, and fearful. The engine's roar didn't help. I got up to go to the bathroom. On my way back, I lost sight of my friend. I panicked. I cried. I had trouble catching my breath. What was happening to me? Herman made an appointment with his family's psychotherapist after that day. They all seemed to have some time with their therapist, which I had never come close to. I had so much anxiety, I couldn't finish the battery of tests that Dr. Perry gave me. Stumbling into the reception area from the small room I had been directed to for the exam, I muttered, "I can't do this," to the lady through my tears. She took the test from me and asked me to take a seat. Soon Dr. Perry emerged and invited me to his office. I couldn't speak, only sob. It was a few minutes before I realized that what the good doctor was saying was that I should be admitted to the psychiatric ward in the nearby city of Springfield, Missouri. I needed help sorting things out. I needed safe harbor. I went to Herman's house in Wheaton, and I packed a bag. Age 23. This next section is after I did something called the EST training. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. Its present iteration is a landmark forum, and it was an incredible experience. There's pretty hefty section about it in the book. But this is the year after I took it. It was when I was very eager to share all my feelings about everything. You may have heard of the term oversharing. This is related to that. My persistent longing landed gradually upon the distracted and delightful charms of another mentor, the other professor I loved. Dr. William McKinley was my professor of classic playwrights. His ability to make the plays of Chekhov and Ibsen dance in my heart like personal magicians was disturbing. I wanted to psychically dine on these plays. I wanted expository lecturing, in-depth discussion, connecting the dots of ennui with luxury, privilege with decay, despair with courage. All this combined with the stature, warmth, and blonde Irish beauty of the professor was almost too much for my mind and body to contain. I exploded inwardly, intellectually, and occasionally outwardly, physically, in passionate alone time with these geniuses of humanity and life of the mind. Days went by in class with Professor McKinley. I watched his every gesture with liquid dreaminess. Dreams of him continued long after class. I saw his face while running, writing papers. I had visions of traveling to exotic birthplaces of the playwrights we studied, hand in hand, sunning ourselves and diving into waters of blue oceanic desire. I had to tell him, no matter the outcome, regardless of circumstance, his or mine, he had to know of my love. But how would I do it? Sorry to say, not very creatively. I made an appointment to see him during office hours. I approached his enormous desk that stretched for miles. I was small and awkward. He was Adonis at the top of a mountain of papers and handsome gadgets, gifts from adoring female students, no doubt. I sat, clumsy and unrehearsed. What can I help you with today? A natural question. I said something about the difference between Ibsen and Chekhov. I liked Ibsen, but I found him annoying next to Chekhov. Ibsen seemed to bludgeon you with his point. Chekhov, however, was subtle and let his characters tell you the point, which wasn't always clear, but indicated in such a way that you entered the life of the characters and found surprises and gifts that were sometimes embarrassingly like your own life. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I think about this and about that and mumble, 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 you know. The professor looked confused but polite and a bit antsy. And do you know that I love you? There it lay. On top of the desk, amid all the papers, like an unborn creature, or a silly paperweight from a tacky tourist souvenir store. I was mortified, My face lit up in fire, my limbs like Gumby. I wanted to jump and run, but how could I after such an awkward revelation? I sat, dumb, limp, yet leaden. Now, he did the best he could to answer. I have a wife. I'm in the middle of a divorce after a painful affair. I couldn't possibly pursue anything like a dalliance. He actually said dalliance. And so on and so forth it went. I managed to stand. I said something puny and polite like, "Thank you for your time." I walked quickly to the door and out into the garish sunlight. It was over. I had spilled my guts. That was me, and I hated myself. But somehow, over the ensuing days, I completed the semester with some shreds of dignity, and I managed to shake off the humiliation that comes with the vulnerability of intense self-disclosure, also known as oversharing. So that's some from the book, and I just have a couple of poems I'd love to share with you. This first is called The Weight of a Man. The weight of a man, head, body, arms, legs, can be grounding, keeping one from floating away, quashing desires to flee, narrowing one's location and focus to here and now, giving one a kind of purpose and peace, arousing desire and dreams. The weight of a man, anger, greed, power, need, can be wearisome, worrying, causing one to struggle to be free, gasping for clean air, longing for sky and sea, a quiet space in a secret place where things make sense and the self is once again safe and seen. The weight of a man walking through trees, footsteps heavy, entering the house, can be paralyzing, causing things to rattle and shake, hearts to pound, palms to sweat and hold tightly in prayer. The weight, the sorrowing weight, the trembling, crushing weight of a man. This next one is called Self-Talk. She said to herself in the mirror, "Where have I been all my life? I clean the toilet and I think I'm doing yoga. I watch the news and pretend to meditate, cook dinner and see myself on stage, talk to my friend and dream of good fortune." She said to herself on the wooded trail, "This is life, real life, not a fable or a dream. Sound the alarm. Wake up, wake up." Holy One interjects, "Fear not, beloved, it's all a dream. Wake up and find a new dream from which to awaken." Shake the body, the hands, the feet, the head. Look up and dance. Clear out all thoughts and be. Kind of a dumb poem. This next is called Holy Communion. This is after my mother was in the hospital for the last time and came home on hospice. Back from the dead, our mother, back from the white room with flowers, sharing a meal of 1,000 Sundays. Sun found us through curtains and blinds, casting blessed light on every smile, every worn word and familiar burst of laughter. Pot roast and greens, fresh tomatoes, plenty of gravy and potatoes, the glorious tea with lemon and ice. Me sitting in silence, my hand on hers. When God moved me back and touched the top of my head with knowledge, this was our Last Supper, our Holy Communion of hands and hopes. This was our glimpse of heaven, a time to come, and now, here in our midst. One more, shorty. This is called When No Answer Comes. She dropped, she sat, so worried and weary. She had no clue. She thought she must find a way, the way out. Somehow, she had no trust. She felt she must. Her eye cast down, fell down on the ant. The ant, so slow in this space, so small and slow. What did he know? She slept, just slept. Head down, rolled round. Sleep fell like dew, like stars, like snow. She awoke and rose up, so slow. Then a spring, just a spring, crept into her step. She stepped, she leapt out, right out. She suddenly knew and stepped right out. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Walker. The transformative power of words, we're celebrating that. And those of us who are writing know that an audience is very precious. So we really appreciate your coming out, your tuning in. And our next reading is October 18th. We'll be featuring Susan Garrett and Steffi Seamus. So come back here on Saturday the 18th. And in the meanwhile, consider donating to Forbes Library and Gallery of Readers. We need books and writing and arts and peace. Thank you all so much. Linger for refreshments and to talk to one another. Thank you.